here.
Does anybody else?
Now you may
Now you
begin.
can start.
So Armina's gonna hand those out. That was from Fannie Mae. It came from, and we should thank the source. It was from Jordan Bedard. And he's on the bottom of the thing, though. I think we cut his phone number off, but he's a wonderful lender. If you don't have a lender that you love, he's my favorite.
Mine too.
Jessica's favorite also.
Mine too.
Okay, so we all know that the lawsuit was settled. The Department of Justice is now having some thoughts about having settled it, but we don't know how that'll shake out. But effective July 1st is when the new regulations come into play. So between now and July 1st, everything is the way as it used to be. But as of July 1st, things will change. And as of right now, they're going to change to the way we're going to talk about. And the way we're going to talk about is that we're going to have to do something that gets us paid. Because we'll no longer be offered a cooperative commission through the listing agent. Okay, so we have to talk about how we're going to get paid. And as Jessica brought up on the way in, we have to talk about what we need to say to our sellers to get them to understand that they're still paying 6% or whatever percent you normally ask for. So if a seller agrees to pay commission through the RPA, some lenders are taking it to mean that this, and I gave you my notes that I wrote to teach the class, are taking it to mean that the 6% allowable contribution toward the buyer from FHA would be less the commission. So if you wanted 3%, it would be 6% less 3%, which would be only 3% allowable to the buyer. VA is definitely still doing that. The 4% that they offer will be less than 3% until they write their own regulations, and VA has not yet written their regulations, but they have between now and July 1st to get that done, and you don't think they will. Well, I think that they have the veterans' best interest at heart, and it's gonna stop the veterans from being able to buy if he can't get that 3% contributed to him.
It's not that, it just takes longer with the VA to go through the House and Senate to get approved. You
Okay,
can't just change the regulations, it actually has to be approved by the government,
okay,
where FHA has a lot more flexibility.
yeah, Fannie Mae
Yes.
just covered that.
And Fannie Mae and all that, so it will change, it just might not be until September as far as for the VAs. That's the only difference. I'm not saying they won't do it. Of course, they're all gonna do it. And also, as I've said before, Fannie Mae has gone to their underwriters and are trying to raise it from 6%.
They fixed it.
Okay,
I just put that out.
okay.
Anyway, and on conventional 3%, if you're asking for 3% for the buyer, would means your commission would wipe out any contribution. Some lenders are gonna take it that way. So when you get an offer from, if you have our listing agent, when you get an offer from another agent, you immediately need to talk to that lender and see what his company's policy is regarding the commission that you're to be paid. I know that with Guild, they had a meeting this morning and they are not gonna, on conventional, they're gonna put it in section H of the CD, which does not affect the contribution. And he's not a Guild anymore. Where is he at, Jessica?
He's with Nexa Mortgage. Remember, he changed from,
Yeah,
he's like a broker now.
yeah,
But Nexa Mortgage.
Nexa
But
Mortgage.
going back to what you were saying, the more important thing that you're saying, Juju, is each lender writes their own rules.
That's right. So you need to talk, if you're the listing agent, you need to talk to the lender for the buyer to determine what their perception on the contribution is.
So there is no set rule is what she's saying. It can be individual. The saying that we used to say, and I know Jojo, that who has the gold writes the rules. So who has the money writes their rules of what they could do. So some lenders will have a better situation than other lenders. So for your clients, they need to shop really well for their loans if they want it to be included in the seller's.
Right, and when you're working with a buyer, you need to talk to their lender and make sure that they're going to follow this new Fannie Mae regulation, which you now have.
Right,
Or the conventional regulation that says that it can go in section H of the CD, just like a transactions fee, and do not affect the contribution.
correct.
Okay, those are and VA, we just have to wait for VA to come around to make good sense of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And like Michael said, that could be September, so VAs are gonna be kind of touch and go between now and September, or between July and September, which is kind of sad, because VA loans are wonderful loan. But you're gonna have to be careful with VAs. So the point that I'm trying to make is whether you're working with the seller and you're getting offers, or whether you're working with the buyer and you're writing offers, you have to talk to the buyer's lender and make sure that they are going to follow this new Fannie Mae regulation that says that the contribution does not apply, that your commission does not apply to the contribution to the buyer. Because in this market, we're asking for buyer's costs to be paid.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not, but if you are, it's important, or if you're getting an offer that asks for buyer's costs to be paid, you have to make sure that that other agent, because we all know that the other agent always isn't always wide awake. That the other agent understands that his commission will be reduced by the amount of that contribution if the lender won't allow it. Is that clear? And while you don't care whether his commission gets reduced or not, it could cause problems at the end of the transaction when he starts balking and not wanting to do his job because he's not getting paid. Do we have any questions so far, or does anybody want me to go over anything again so far?
So can that be presented to the buyer's agent from the very beginning?
We're gonna go there. Yes, it can. And I talked to, the underwriters for, Jordan's, well, I didn't, Jordan talked to the underwriters for me because we talked to them. And we put some verb, you can add to the RPA, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, but it's on your notes.
Well,
So-
what she's going over right now is just a standard explanation of the situation before she starts on the buyer's brokerage agreement. Because you need to understand from the beginning, what she's saying is that, again, everything is depending on the situation. There's no set boilerplate answer to the fact of how it's gonna be handled, because it depends on the lender of the buyer. Also, and you brought up a very good point here, the listing agent needs to understand this, because your fiduciary responsibility is to get that property sold for the owner. It's not about you double ending the deal, okay? And a lot of agents think it is, oh, they're thinking, I'm a great listing agent, I'm gonna make a fortune because now I don't have to deal with the buyer's agent, okay? Guess what? It ain't happening, all
Nothing's
right?
really gonna change. It's how we say if it's gonna change.
Exactly. And there are agents out there you're gonna run across that are gonna act like, oh, I don't need to deal with you because I don't have to pay you and all that. Great, that person's not working in the best interest of their client.
Right.
The best interest of their client is to get the best offer on the table, and that usually comes by having other agents do it. I mean, you can see this, I'm gonna pick on a few countries here, France, Germany, Mexico, non-developers. When someone goes to sell their property, it takes them forever to sell because they only have one agent working for them. Instead of our system in the United States, which is cooperative, that's why they use that word. We all work together to find the best buyer for that house. No other country does it as good as we do.
That's why we're running around the world teaching other parts of the world how to do this.
Yes,
Okay,
actually, it might be a new job for you.
no, I'm retiring. I swear to God, I'm trying to retire.
Hey,
I know.
you retired, you gave up property management, that's like retiring.
Yeah, that's all my property management. I'm out there.
No, you can't retire.
But, okay, so that having been said, if there aren't any questions about why you need to call the lender, if your buyer comes to you with his own lender, the lender that you normally work with, you need to talk to him and find out what his take on these rules are, because you may need to change lenders to get someone that will follow this Fannie Mae regulation, which says that they don't have to reduce the credit.
Especially if the buyer needs it, because they'll tell you that during your consultation that they don't have enough cash to close. So if
Right.
you know that, then you
Then
gotta
you
make
gotta
sure they
go
can
with
get
a
it.
lender
Yeah.
that will follow this Fannie Mae policy that I've given you. So you want to keep this for a while so that you can refer to it.
And just to confirm that if the buyer, you're the listing agent, the buyer is responsible for the difference.
If you're the listing agent, the buyer can be responsible for the difference.
Or the buyer's agent. It's not gonna fall on the listing agent side.
Yes, it will.
Oh, well, sorry.
Yeah, it'll still fall on the listing agent side, and why it will is because we are going to now not negotiate for commissions through MLS. We are gonna negotiate directly with the other agent for a portion of the commission.
So it could.
And I gave you a form for that, and we will get to those forms in a few minutes. I just
So-
wanna,
Are they they're still gonna leave it in the MLS if you wanna advertise a commission amount? No? Okay.
no, MLS will change.
And when is that, do we know?
Because we can't cooperate with one
No,
another.
I said when.
July first.
July first,
Oh, okay.
July first.
There is a little bit of confusion about the July 1 right now.
Yeah, because the DOJ is talking about changing the settlement.
Yeah,
But they have not come out with a definite statement about when.
correct.
So until they do, we still have to operate with what's still written in concrete, which is July 1. If it changes, I'll know, and I will let Michael and Armina know. They can just email it to you guys what the new date is.
So that means read Armina, by the way, people on Zoom, read Armina's email.
So this is gonna be like commercial, basically, where,
I took
right
a
when you talk on the
commercial
phone, you
form,
ask them,
Residential form, that's
Yeah.
all I
you
did.
just ask them if they're paying a buyer commission?
Yeah, we'll get there and talk about what we do. Okay, so this is going to make the buyer brokerage agreement something that we need to do. The buyer needs to know that he is being represented by someone. Okay. Do you guys want to go over the client registration? Let's go over the client
Yeah.
registration and commission agreement first, and I put a copy of it there, and I made it a go global agreement, and Michael says it's okay. Dodge the bullet there.
I'm really worried about it.
I wasn't really worried about it, but I did get the phone number wrong, so,
I will edit it and
I sent it
send
in
it out.
in a Word
It's
document,
correct.
so,
It's correct, I sent it to everyone.
oh, you sent the.
All the
card, did
agents.
it?
It's not here.
This one says 702 equals 798 1500.
That, you must have printed that one out, I know someone did.
Yeah.
All the ones that I printed are
You
correct.
fixed it.
Okay,
And the ones I sent to every agent
And
is
Jessica,
correct.
if you're
I
real nice
printed
to
this
her,
one
knows how to
because I
make
did
these
not get
into
the
tab
correction.
between forms.
Oh, it was in your email.
Michael,
it
Jessica knows
everyone.
how to make these into tab between forms.
You sent it to everyone,
Mhm.
okay, she sent it to me, so that's why I printed it
All right,
out.
guys, let's just
Okay.
move on.
Okay, Jessica
All right.
knows how to make this into tab between forms, so Armina and Michael, I'd be really nice to Jessica and see if she would do that.
That's right, I sign her checks now, so.
Okay, this is a client registration and commission agreement. This came directly from, I'm a CCIM, I'm a commercial broker, and it came directly from my commercial documents. Okay, I did adapt it for residential. I made a few changes. But what you will do now, when you will get a buyer's broker sign, and we'll talk about that next, but after you do, you will have the buyer initial up front that you're going to give this to the other agent. As a commercial agent, when I see a property that I'm interested in for my client, I register my client and tell the other broker how much commission I anticipate receiving. Alon, you've been through this with me and you probably still do it. Because you don't know any better, that's what you were taught to do. And it makes it easier for you to follow this. So I did add to it who you are and who they are. To the top, date, buyer representation company and seller representation company and the property address. What this does is it serves as cooperating brokers agreement and client registration between whoever they are and Go Global. Regarding the sale of whatever the address of the property is in the city of, whichever city it is, state of Nevada. We hereby register, and you're gonna put the buyer's name on that line. As potential buyers, it is agreed that if a sale is executed by the above named buyers, including all persons or entities acting on behalf of buyer, which means if their sister comes in and buys it for them, or they buy it in an LLC, you're still gonna get paid, which is kind of important. A commission will be paid to Go Global by whoever the seller's brokerage is. So now instead of getting it from the seller,
Why would that set a brokerage? If the new agreements that the commission is get by the buyer.
it is paid by the buyer, and the buyer's paying the price for the house, is he not? Does that price for the house include his commission?
Maybe not.
Well, if it doesn't, then it's gonna go against the concession. So you really
So we
want
need
to,
to specify here something different, correct?
no, this covers it.
Okay.
This is CYA's you. Uh, Because the seller, when he takes a listing, is going to take a listing with enough commission so he can share it with the other agent. So rather than the commission being paid by the seller through escrow, the commission is all gonna be paid to the listing agent and then split between the two agencies. That's the only difference.
Not through title?
It may go through title, but it'll be a separate document. Or however title is, we don't know how title's gonna decide to handle it. They may need the buyer and the seller both to sign the commission agreement. That's probably what will change. Instead of just the seller signing the commission agreement, both will sign the commission agreement. Because both of them are agreeing to, that this is part of the price. You can't say that it's part of the price. That's the one thing you can't do. Because once you say that the commission is part of the price, the appraiser will reduce the value of the house by the commission. So you can't say that. This is all a game of semantics.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna do it like how we do rentals now, where we're paid and then we have to pay the co-op agent.
What will
from our
ultimately
office.
happen, I don't know.
Yeah.
But right now, what we're doing is title will figure out how they're gonna do their end.
Yeah,
Because it may be a separate, it's probably gonna be a document signed by both the buyer and the seller, and then it won't change.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because the commission has always been included in the sales price,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Is all we're in is a semantics game. Is how do we say it to comply with the lawsuit?
yeah.
Probably shouldn't have said it that way, but that's the truth.
Nobody heard that?
Except the recording.
Okay, well, we'll just publish that so I can get in trouble.
Can edit here.
Internal only.
Okay, so you're registering them, and then it'll be by to go global by the seller's brokerage. So when a seller takes a listing, he has to build in enough commission to pay the other agent. Right? The seller's not paying them, the other broker's paying them.
Mhm.
End of story. And the amount of, and this is however much you're gonna get, your percentage. So if you want 3% of the gross sales price, that's what you put in there. If you want 2%, if you want 2.5%, whatever you think whatever you expect. Typically, as a commercial agent, when I call the other agent to tell them I have a buyer that's interested, I ask them how much commission there is, and they tell me what the gross commission is, and it's split however they want it split. They tell me right up front. And then we're gonna have that happen more often now. We're gonna call one another and say, how much commission did you build into this? And they're gonna say 3% or 2.5% or 2% or whatever the heck it is, right? Now, if you don't like that, you can put down more. So this will give us an opportunity to get more when we're getting the shaft. Sometimes, don't you ever feel like you get the shaft on this? Yes,
But what's gonna prevent the seller's agent from just saying, they're gonna have to go to your buyer?
then it's not gonna happen because you're gonna write into the offer, and I put some verbiage in here at the bottom that says buyer and seller are aware that real estate commissions will be paid to buyer's representative and seller's representative through escrow at closing through separate negotiations between the parties. You're gonna put that in your offer. Now, if your seller doesn't negotiate, you're gonna pull the deal. You can make it contingent upon the buyer, through separate negotiations and contingent upon separate negotiations between the parties. You can, instead of through, you can make it contingent upon separate negotiations between the parties.
Hmm.
So Deirdre, do you think the listing agreement that we have for LVR is gonna stay the same where it says you're charging X%? And then if you charge
Yeah, that's-
5 or 6%, you can choose what to do with it?
That's was never been when that changed 2 years ago, that's what it is still, and that it'll still be that way. It makes no difference.
So can you do, for example, 3% and after they give you 2.5 or 2, so you tell to the buyer, okay, I give you a credit, and you a credit.
Yeah, and that's how
So
you're gonna
just
write
put-
it, and
just
you
put
can
it there.
write the
Fine.
buyer's broker's
Give
agreement.
me 2.5, I give you half a point credit.
Yeah, you can negotiate. It's
Negotiate,
negotiable.
yes,
Yeah.
every
Can be negotiable. Because I like the way I thought about, contingent upon. So now the offer is contingent upon separate negotiations between the parties. Right, and the parties are the seller, the buyer, the listing agent, and the buyer's agent.
So question, is this effective now or July the 1st?
July first.
So what if you open an escrow on June 28th and you.
If it closes after July first, it's effective.
So if your offer has been accepted before July 1st, you stay with the old style?
No,
Okay,
no, if you're gonna close after July first, you're with the new style.
okay.
So we need to.
That's closing date,
not opening. Yeah, it's gotta be
COE, closing date.
No,
We
I
gotta-
think it's opening date.
We got a question from someone on Zoom. I
Yes.
think Laureen.
Hi.
Hi. Now, are we allowed to call the listing agent and ask about commission before we show? Because if we do it aftermath, it's less
Yeah.
likely that the listing agent or seller willing to pay, isn't it?
Well, probably not, but yes, I wouldn't call before I would show, I would call before I write an offer. Okay, but you can call before you show. Oftentimes you have
So-
to call, but anyway.
Because even if they say
But-
0 when you show, it's still negotiable. So if you give them a good enough offer, they might be willing to give you your money.
And you're gonna explain to the buyer that if they say 0, then you're gonna be paying me this much, and they're gonna say, oh no, forget that property.
Yeah.
Right, so that's where we
No
haven't gotten
sale.
to it yet about the buyer brokerage agreement.
You know, if I say to the buyer, well, this is gonna cost you an extra $9,000, are you cool with that? They're gonna say, forget that property out of the next.
So.
Lorraine, did you understand?
Breaking the law.
Are you okay, Lorraine? Okay. Anybody else on Zoom? Cause I don't wanna forget about you guys over there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alright.
So, no, it's, you know, it's really about understanding the semantics and a little attitude, you know, a little sass here, girls and boys.
That's not a problem, I just.
No. I like
I'm
that
sure
now.
some of the people at this table.
Yeah.
A lot, you aren't gonna have a problem with it. Someone's having a problem.
Supposed to pick up the kids, but Robbie's doing that.
Okay, okay, so, I just made a change to this verbiage, but you made a note on that. To put in the RPA, right?
The contingent upon.
Contingent upon negotiations, which makes the whole deal contingent upon the negotiations to be satisfactory, and the only difference is the buyer's gonna know what happened.
Right.
The buyer's gonna know you got the shaft, and they need to know. Don't they?
Yeah.
Because so often we get a short commission and the buyer never knows we got cheated.
Right.
Right? Now the buyer will know, and the buyer will get righteously indignant, especially if they have to pay
Yeah.
or not buy that house. Because either they won't be able to pay because it'll now be financially impossible for them to pay, and they're gonna be really pissed if that happens, right? Or they're gonna say, screw them. If they don't wanna put enough money in this deal so that my agent can get paid, then I'm moving on to the next house.
Yeah.
The buyer will create the problem because the buyer will say, well, screw you, I'm not getting the house that I want because you want your commission. So
I
I
think
think
that's
that,
an-
I think that some people will try to go, because I see when I do open houses, some people will try to go without real estate agents to see if they can get a better deal.
I always wanna say, how's that gonna work for you?
Well,
It does not work well for them, and most of them know that it does not work well for them,
Usually
they
falls
know
out.
they need us.
Yeah,
That's
usually
where
falls out there.
that communication and your consultation comes into play. Whenever I have consultations with my buyers, they fully understand why they need me representing them, and they're not going directly to the seller or going directly to the builder. And they're 100% on board. So once they know at that point too, that's where you bring all this into play. On if they're not paying me, you're gonna be responsible to, they're gonna fully understand, screw that, we're gonna move on. You know, or we're gonna negotiate and make sure that you get paid, cause I can't do it, you know.
Right, and if they think that,
Mhm.
if
And
they
if you
think
make
so,
them sign the buyer brokerage for a certain amount of time, they're locked into you representing them anyway. If you're gonna commit to them for 6 months, doing all the work, doing all the showing, spending the gas, the time, everything that you do, then they need to commit to you too.
that's exactly how I teach it.
Raised a badass.
Yeah. I wish that's from. Okay, so let's go to the buyer brokerage agreement, because you have to start with, when you get a buyer, you have to start with a consultation. you no longer are gonna be able to just meet them at the first house and start showing.
No,
You need to have a consultation. I don't care if it's in Starbucks, because it's on the other side of town. Wherever it is that you can meet with them, you tell people when they call you and they want to see real estate, that you need to first sit down with them and explain the process. So what you're going to go to them with, and Matt has a list of what goes in the Go Global package. But what you're gonna sit down with them is, you're gonna have some marketing materials. Those marketing materials are gonna include first, what you're gonna do for them. Right? Which is what you're gonna try to help them find the right property for the least amount of, for the lowest price possible, with the least amount of inconvenience in their time frame. Right? And I have 2 documents that cover that, one for sellers and one for buyers, which I'll be glad to share with you. Or Jessica updated them, maybe she's willing to share the updated ones.
well,
with
I
you.
have a whole freaking book now.
But you start with those documents,
Yeah.
but you sit down with them and you meet with them and you tell them what you're gonna do for them and what you do
Yeah.
for them. Because they don't know what we do.
Right.
You know, we sit here like ducks on a pond and the water's all smooth and underneath our little feet are just going like this, you know? And they think everything's nice and smooth because that's all they can see.
Because that's our job.
Because it's our job to make it smooth for them.
Right,
But-
that's the thing they don't perceive, is like what you just said, is that you give them the perception smoothness, because if you actually show them what all you do,
Yeah,
then they think like, oh my God, well, the other agent over there acts like, so now it's gonna change the dynamics.
right.
You have to educate your buyers.
Yeah, my consultation goes through the entire home buying process, what the inspection looks like, what the appraisal looks like, what an earnest money deposit is, what the loan process looks like, what and what the closing costs look like. It goes through everything. So then they really understand that you're a professional, you know what you're doing, and you're here to help them navigate all of this. And that, oh my God, there's so much that's involved in this transaction. I could never go in this alone. Yeah.
How long does it take you to do your consultation?
About 45 minutes to an hour over coffee.
How about yours, Deirdre?
Yeah, about the same.
Okay. 'cause
Now, if I get a
know
real
yours tend to be
talker-
More dramatic and detailed.
There's a real, sometimes they get real talky, and my first time home buyers have tons of questions, which we save till the end, right? Because majority of the time, my entire presentation answers all their questions up front. So they have their whole list of questions, so I'm like, we'll save those for the end, let me go through, and if you have anything else at the end, we'll go over it. By the time we get to the end, they're like, nope, we answered everything.
Yeah, and you've gotten your buyer brokerage signed and your
Yep.
duties owed and your buyer
Easy
brokerage
peasy.
signed, and it's all
No
done.
questions asked. The only questions I get asked sometimes are by like lawyers who love to nitpick everything, and then just once you explain it correctly, or sometimes I've called her and be like, can I change this in any way to make them feel more comfortable? And she'll tell me something to put in the additional terms, or whatever it may be. But now that it's changing, the answer is gonna be no. Because normally it was like, okay, Global Realty will accept commission percentage that as offered on the MLS is what I used to change it to in the additional terms. That is no longer, because it's not being offered on the MLS. So now the answer is just no. But that's where all this comes into
Yeah,
play.
and that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
This will help you guys get from here to there. Some of these, see, I've been doing this stuff. I've been doing buyer brokerages for Andrew and Alon and Jessica don't know any different. They know that's what they're supposed
They
to do.
were required.
Yeah. But now everybody's gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna have to do is now talk about the buyer brokerage agreement. I want you to know that I wrote this buyer brokerage agreement for LVR and they did not change a word.
We'll be happy.
Imagine that. We're
It was-
lucky that you will teach us on this one.
It was written by me and Mike Cherry, if any of you guys know who Mike is. He's a retired Supreme Court justice here in Manhattan. Okay, so the buyer brokerage agreement is the buyer accepts and grants to Go Global the right commencing on such and such a date and expiring on midnight on such and such a date. The law in Nevada says you have to have a definite final termination date, so it has to end. It doesn't have to start on a certain day, but it has to end on a certain date.
Did we print those out? Sorry, I don't have them over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what we're, yeah, we're speaking. You two should have it memorized since she hasn't changed
I was
it.
like, well, if it has to change, but if she's gonna add some stuff, I'm a note taker.
Okay, now the general nature of the property is residential land, commercial or other. Typically, it's gonna be residential. Buyer agrees to work exclusive. Now, it just talks about what the buyer has to do. The buyer, and how do I introduce this? The first thing I do is I have the consultation, and I talk to them about all the things that I'm gonna do for them. Then I segue into the duties owed, where I talk about what the law requires me to do. And that it requires me to be fair with all parties, but then it requires all the rest of the stuff in the bottom of the page for me to do for my client. So I have to be fair and honest with both sides. But I have to be obedient, and I have to be loyal, and I have to disclose, and I have to account for their money, and I have to, keep their confidence. I have to be confidential to their information, and I have to use, reasonable skill and care. So those are, and I have to present all offers. Those are all the elements of the duties owed. That's in 645.252 through 259.
But you have to do that first before you have them sign the buyer.
Yeah, if you do that
That's
first,
a
you
book
tell
you're
them.
saying, please do it first and date and time it.
Well, that's why, yeah, she said after the presentation or consultation, duties owed is the next thing that's
Yeah,
done.
the law says you have to get it signed as soon as it's practicable, and the division will fine you $10,000 for not doing it first. As Alana and I well know. We both got to pay. I was his broker.
Shit happens.
Yes, it does. That was an expensive shit happens. Anyway, so we lived.
This is a big CYA right here.
Yes.
Duties owed first before
But
anything.
I don't mean to pick on him, but not using people's names, someone did already, but brokers pay, brokers and agents. Don't think that this is like the real estate.
Alana and
division.
I split it.
I didn't, yeah, but I'm just saying, the real estate division does look at this stuff, and they actually look right down to the date timestamp, okay?
Yeah.
So when I get nitpicky on you because you didn't fill in the date timestamp or do anything you're supposed to do, that's why, because you're gonna end up paying. And in my contract, you pay, and you pay for me too.
Well,
Another,
my contract says the same thing, but I felt really bad.
Yes.
another CYA is as they're going to write down the time, actually look at your watch and give them the time, or they'll just write what they did before thinking that they don't need to. I
Right,
go, oh, now it's 11:07. And they go, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, the real estate division likes it that way. And then it's funny, and then they don't care.
Right.
right.
So you're gonna talk to them about all the things you're gonna do for them. Then you're gonna present the duties owed, which is a law. You have to, you have to tell them what the law requires of you, with all parties and with them. And you're gonna say, this is my commitment to you. Everything.
Use it as a tool.
Use it as a tool. This is my commitment to you, and I need you to sign that. I've explained that to you, and they're happy to sign the duties owed. Because you've explained to them that you made a commitment to them. What I'm asking of you is that you make a commitment back to me. It's only right. They need to commit to you if you're committing to them. I mean, would you get married to somebody who says they want to sleep with everybody in town?
Or if I was gonna sell their house.
That's a, for
Well,
example.
maybe if you're
What country
Robert,
would
but
we be in?
not usually.
And what does she look like?
No.
Has anybody seen 90 Day Fiancé? Please, okay?
Yeah. Anyway, so the bottom line is it has to be a mutual commitment. If they're not gonna commit to you, you're just wasting your time anyway. You're never gonna sell them anything. They have to-
Thank you.
You have to know at the beginning that you have a relationship.
Otherwise, it wastes so much time and then we're not.
Yes. Oh, my God, absolutely. You waste a whole bunch of time with somebody who won't commit to you. You don't need it if they're not gonna commit.
Yeah.
So you ask them, so you say, so I have explained to you what my commitment is to you, and I'm gonna ask you to commit to me. And we're gonna go through this document, but I'm gonna ask you to sign it so that we have a commitment that goes both ways. And people get that, they understand that, they have no problem with that. If they're gonna commit to you, you might as well know now, as Nancy said, because within 2 weeks, they're gonna blow you off anyway.
Yeah, that's
So
not,
might as well not even start.
that's not the client you wanna work with anyway.
Exactly.
That's
You
what
want,
the hard thing is for people to understand, because you bring it. It's hard to fire your clients,
Mhm.
and you need to learn how, because once you learn how to do it, which Deirdre's an expert at, you work with better clients and you get
Better
more
quality
business.
clients.
I know it doesn't
Absolutely.
sound.
And less gray hairs.
exactly.
Anybody wants to back out and then they will back out beginning.
Well, I would say, in fact, Andrew and I went through a really awful incident with, what's his name out in Green Valley?
I remember his wife's name.
I don't remember his name.
David or something.
David, yeah. Anyway, he's an attorney from Carson City. He was referred to, Andrew, to me, and I put him with Andrew. And, to find him a house in Green Valley. And so we're going along trying to Mr. Properties, and his wife decides that she doesn't like me. Now, Andrew I trained him, he had a buyer's brokerage agreement signed, like a good boy, that said we were going to be paid X% of the sales price. So this attorney calls me up and he says, well, we don't want to work with you anymore. We'll pay you the transaction fee of $395. And I said, well, then we have a really serious problem. Let me send you the document you signed that says that you will pay me 3% of the sales price. So I am going to be expecting you to pay me 3% of whatever you buy from whomever you buy it from. And I said, I'll be fine with that. You can go ahead and buy from whoever you want because I will be collecting my 3%. And he went, oh. And guess what? His wife decided I was okay. Because he bought about a $500,000 house, that would have been a $15,000 check that he really didn't want to buy. Hey, you know, 10 check, imagine that. So we went right along and closed, didn't we, Andrew?
Yes, we did. And they apologized at the end.
If you don't have this one, you probably they will.
If I didn't have this, I'd have been screwed.
Yeah, they will go away.
You know what that's like, Nancy?
I know, I know.
Yeah, you don't need to, you know, as I used to say to Andrew, did you plan on grabbing your ankles here? You don't know what you don't know what that means, so I'll have to have somebody else explain.
Deirdre, what you need to explain a lot of these, because a lot of my agents are from different cultures. You have to get over the cultural aspect of it, being upfront and asking for the business. Instead of asking it at the end after you already got the property under contract, it's basically what you're doing. You're changing, this is the way it should have been done 50 or 100 years ago, whenever we started in this. Have a conversation up front, just like they should get qualified with a letter
How many
before.
Chinese clients do we have, Jessica?
Like 7 or 8.
All of them sign anything I put in front of them.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Well,
I've trained them.
Deirdre, that's what I was gonna say, Deirdre,
Which
number
is
one,
not
train
used to
them.
it.
But
I
also,
think
it's different, and I'm gonna defend my agents in here, is we're not agents, so they accept us being forward and direct,
yes.
okay?
Right.
Coming from someone like Nancy, you know, Alice, all these other, this thing, they work with very prominent, very, just like your clients, okay? But it's harder for them because they expect them to act in the culture that they're from, because that's where they're from.
Good point.
And it's just like with, and
Yeah.
I'll bring it right out, 1% or 1.5% or 2% of the commission they give to the client because it's customary in their country to do that. And they never ask me for the money. That's
That's
because
true.
I'm not Chinese.
Follow you, then follow us.
Okay, well, you have to get over that. Deirdre has spoken. Explain to them, now this is when in Rome, do as
Yes.
Romans do. When in the US, you get to do it our way, and this is the way it is, so get over yourself.
What they'll say, I'll defend them again, what they'll say is, well, I'll go over Raymond Wu, which will do it.
And then you say, okay, I didn't want to work with you anyway, because you were obviously gonna try and cheat me out of money.
Yeah,
Well, you can use Michael as an excuse. It's,
They
hey,
do.
my brokerage requires that this be done upfront.
Yeah.
That way it's not on you and your relationship with them.
and
That's
some of
a
you
really
do
good-
that, some of you are
Yep.
very good at doing that, but I am the pony. You take me out, and walk me in front of the clients to scare them.
Scare them.
That's fine too.
Well, you have to understand, you have to understand what Deirdre said, which is very, very important, which is why I'm trying to get
Yeah.
across from you a lot of times. Sometimes you're just gonna have to lose the client.
Yeah.
And that client is gonna go to the Raymond Wu, as I usually
And he
say.
is going to get cheated.
Right, well, he does, he gets cheated all the time, but he also cheats them. He has a, he has a
It's a
favorite
big
phrase.
off the record.
He has a favorite phrase,
Oh,
like
still have
new,
a
which
recording
doesn't
right here.
translate into Chinese as used.
Oh, God.
Like new to them translated as new appliances. So I get this all the time when he was under me, no, he's no longer, thank you. But that's what I'm saying, is you're gonna have to accept that and accept the loss. Because at the end, right now, especially with what's happening, he's gonna lose even more now, okay? Because he may not get the percentage he needs to be able to pay them the 1.5%, 2% he pays them.
Right, so he's not gonna get any buyers because he's not gonna be able to pay that agent.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And this agreement's gonna get you more clients than it'll lose you.
Absolutely, and good clients.
Right, that's a big,
This
good
will
quality.
filter the
Quality
good one.
client.
Yeah. filter
Yes,
the good-
absolutely.
And repeat clients
clients.
because they know that.
They don't have to
I
find
have
someone
a
else.
client that Jessica's now handling, but it was the very first person I ever sold a house to 43 years ago.
Wow. Dino.
Dino Brancati. In fact, he was in here one day.
Yeah.
And, he's as loyal as the day is long.
Mhm.
But most of your clients are loyal that you have.
Yeah, well, they're loyal to Jessica now. In fact, one of my Chinese clients called me up about 2 weeks ago, Chris Miller, she's married to a white guy. And, she said, she wanted to ask me something about her property manager in Utah. She lives in Utah. She wanted to ask me about her property manager there and what did I think about her breaking the contract with her property manager. And she didn't want to ask Jessica because Jessica's now her agent. And, so she asked me. And so I told her about that and she said, by the way, I just want you to know that, Jessica is the most fabulous agent. She's as good as you ever were.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Good job.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
And her name is Chris Strong. Well, I don't know what her real Chinese first name is. Well, Jackson feels that way.
Yeah,
And he's Hong Shu Jackson,
yeah.
Tan.
I got Sandra Will to calm down too and said I'm doing an awesome job and she's very pleased.
Exactly.
After I got her nasty voicemail because she couldn't figure out how to get into Appfolio to get her statement. I'm like, don't
So-
worry, I'll just email it to you every month, no
So-
problem.
The point that I'm
That's what
trying to
you have to
make
do.
is
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter what the culture of the buyer is. Jackson was my agent and now he's Jessica's client because he retired from real estate. And I said, I'm in a company that's full of Chinese agents, Jackson. If you want to go to a Chinese agent, I got a whole slew of them I can introduce you to. And he said, no, Jessica will work. And he's a male Chinese. And you know, they're worse. Don't ya? Was I not supposed to say that? Oh, man. You're right. I have never been politically correct. Did anybody warn you?
I have a question. So if you found a house and then this seller says, well, I got a buyer for you already, and then the seller says, I want to pay the commission. Can you ditch them?
Absolutely.
Can
And
you?
they can still owe you.
Okay, after you have that signed. Or if you call the seller first and say, okay, the buyer says you need to pay the commission. And then the seller says, I'm gonna increase the price by $6,000.
Then say, I guess we're not gonna be doing a deal.
Okay, so you can't, you can say, I'm not gonna show your house. You haven't broken any law.
Absolutely.
Okay,
If it's your client, you need to have explained to him ahead of time so you don't have that conversation after you've signed the contract.
Right.
okay.
If it's your listing, you need to have this conversation before you begin.
Mhm.
I'm so glad I'm not at the board. I can say anything I feel. If I was at LBR, they'd be fining me for this.
So I'll start finding just what's fun.
Oh,
So I don't want you to feel, missed out or anything. No, I have a question though, what she brought up, which is Sweetly brought up, which is an interesting aspect to it, because we had this problem, I think it was like 2003, 2004. Remember when they were increasing the property values, to, the property was set at this price, now they raised it to cover the closing costs to this price, and that's illegal to do that.
Inflating the prices.
Right.
Yes,
So, how do we, that's where, again, if the listing agent does their job, they should have all that conversation ahead of time with the owner saying, include the closing costs, include everything listed at this price.
right.
And since they've been doing this for years, the house is still gonna appraise unless it was overpriced from the beginning.
Right. Okay, so here's the bottom line, is you explain to the seller, when you do your listing appointment, when you do a listing appointment where you go in with all your paperwork and your presentation, and part of that should be why you are so wonderful. That should be a very important part about it,
Mhm.
why you are so wonderful and what you're going to do
You
for
to show
them.
them the value.
You have to show,
Yeah.
right, you have to show them the value.
Yep.
You have value. Everyone at this table and on that screen has value. You need to share that with them. You need to tell them, because they weren't born with that information.
No.
They were not born with that information. And that's not cultural, that's just a fact of human beings.
Mhm.
They were not born with that information, so you need to share with them your value. And I'll send that those two documents over. The one is the plan of action for sellers and the plan of action for buyers. And then I have the 10 deadly sins of buyers and sellers, the things they shouldn't do. So I'll send all of those over to Armina and Michael. You'll need to, they'll say Realty America all the way through, so you might need to fix that.
I can send them, I already changed it.
Oh, okay. Jessica will send them to you.
Just give us
But,
a copy of
so-
the reminder.
So those are things that, you know, you're definitely going to, when you're listing appointment at your buyer's consultation, those are the things you're gonna do. The first thing you're gonna do is sell yourself. You're a salesman, you have to be able to sell yourself. If you can't sell yourself, you're not gonna be able to sell a house.
Right.
You have to sell yourself. You have to say, this is why I have value. These are all the things I'm gonna give you, all the disclosures that are required for your property. No one puts out a manual that says, unless they want to read the whole division website, that says what you're supposed to do. And I've got to tell you, that's real sleepy time stuff.
And to let you know, title doesn't do it either because they aren't required to.
They are not allowed to.
Right. Because I have, you know, for sale by owners who would say, I'll just have title do it. I go, good luck.
Yeah. See how that works for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Bottom line is that, you know, so you know, you have to start by telling them how wonderful you are. Then you're gonna give them the duties owed on both. That says, these are all the things that I'm doing for you, and in exchange for that, I'm going to ask you to do the same back for me. To treat me the same way that I expect that I'm gonna be treating you. If they say, no, I'm not going to, then get up and say, thank you very much, and leave. And take all your stuff with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't leave anything.
Yeah, don't be, like, all your stuff.
They want to keep it.
Yeah, they'll try to use it.
Yeah.
So, and thank them very much and be very pleasant and just get in your car and drive away. You'll be surprised how fast they'll call you back. Yes, Andrew?
What's your opinion on buyer's brokerage agreements that you do for, say, you have someone coming out of town, online lead or something like that, and they're only gonna be looking at houses for 2 or 3 days, doing like a really short buyer's brokerage agreement just to prove.
I don't care if you do a buyer's broker's agreement for 1 day or for 6 months. When I sit down with the buyer, the first thing I find out is how long is it gonna take you to find a house? And if they tell me that they're gonna find a house within the next 3 weeks, because they have to be out of their apartment in 2 months, I love them. I'm in love, right? Aren't you in love when that happens?
Mhm.
And so I'll make my buyer broker's agreement for 2 or 3 months. I make it shorter. If they say that they wanna look for a while, I might not even work with them. Why would I waste my time? The market's gonna be completely different in 6 months.
But again, with his example, I don't like the 6 days or when they're coming in, because they'll come in and see houses with you. But then they may wanna come back again, and now they can go to someone else, and I would do at least for 3 months.
Yeah, I want enough time so I can get them closed on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my thought on it is if it's someone you don't have a long-standing relationship with, maybe it's the first time you're meeting in person, you cold called them off of the list or something like that. You still get the agreement signed, but if they're not comfortable signing a 3-month agreement,
Well, then you sign a 2-day agreement, sign a 1-day agreement, a 2-day agreement, take them out, have your consultation, keep all your stuff, don't give it to them. Take them out and show them a few properties. At the end of that time, you're gonna say, are you satisfied with the way we worked?
My service, yeah.
And then,
Because
And
if
if
you
they
get
say
it signed
yes,
for
say,
3
okay, we're gonna
days,
extend this agreement.
show them the house, there's no way to know that they went and bought that house through somebody else, so now you can fight for the commission that you're due.
right,
Unless you wait another 30 days and check the tax record for their name, and now they bought it in LLC, so you're screwed regardless.
right.
Well, that's why this says and any entity.
Yeah,
But again, you have.
but you would never know, cause it's gonna say JWM LLC, and you only know
the real name.
John Washington
Yeah.
as the guy, and you're looking to see what house he bought.
Okay, and Nancy brings up, what if they don't give you your real name? Yes, but in order to comply with HUD and fair housing, if you take ID from one, you have to take ID from everyone.
Right, so you all hear that?
Okay.
This is where getting pre-approved before showing homes actually comes into play. If they're a cash buyer, you get a statement from the bank that has their name on it.
Oh.
And then you're not
And
guessing.
if they're getting a
Yeah, you know?
loan, you get the pre-approval letter from their lender, which has their name on it.
Yeah, we don't do looky-loos to go because they wanna go see pretty
You're
kitchens
not a
for
tour
their next
guide.
renovation project.
You're
We
not
don't
a
do
tour
that.
guide.
So
Yeah,
what
we
did
need to
they
get
hear?
that proof of fund or
To see
waivers letter.
Can we
Mhm.
still use that?
Absolutely. Now, it won't guarantee that the new house is gonna pay you.
Yeah. because like Lennar not paying now.
Yeah, well, they'll get over that.
So I showed a few Lennars and I go like, oh shoot, I didn't even have that.
Well, then you just tell them, I'd love to sell your house, can we work something out? And you send them over your compensation and registration and commission agreement.
Cause it's all negotiable.
And say, get back to me if we can work. And you'd be surprised, they will. And they will work with you. They may not give you the whatever percent, 3% it says here. They may say, I'll only give you 1.5%, but at that point, it beats a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, does it not?
Yeah, 'cause on new builds, you're not doing inspections and appraisals and all the things that we have to do for the normal transaction anyway. So-
Basically just-
So if you get this, if you get the buyer brokerage signed and you get this signed, and this is, they would have to sign this, but you want to have the buyer initial it so that they know that the buyer saw this.
So this should be included
With
with the
buyer
cover of the
brokerage.
offer,
Oh, yeah, you should send
Right.
this over with the offer.
right?
That's where the buyer's image from.
Yeah, at the bottom of the
Yeah,
place where the
the
buyer
bottom,
has to
yeah.
initial.
Yeah, there's
Because the
no-
buyer isn't agreeing to this, but you want an acknowledgement that he's seen this.
Yeah, okay, the initial approves that.
Okay, now the buyer's broker, so, it said that the buyer's obligated to you. It says that you hold alliance, that you have representations and that you expect to be paid. You've already told him why you expect to be paid, and the rest of it's just contract clauses. It says what disclosures that are required. It says that it's non-confidential, so a buyer can't come to you and say, we can't work with any other buyers on that house. Wrong, I didn't tell you it was confidential, it's not. What I'm telling you is that I will write an offer for you if you're interested in buying that house. And I'll write an offer from anybody else, especially if it's your own listing, that,
And the offer is confidential. You can't share their offer to the other client that wants to offer on the same house. You should give it your best shot. and
yeah,
Whoever
give it your
wins,
best
wins.
shot, and the winner wins, exactly. And
Excuse
maybe
me, I
my
have a question.
I dealt with over the years many Chinese clients and never had some of the problems that Michael tells me you guys have, but it might be because I'm not Chinese.
We have a question on Zoom.
Yes,
Hi, just for clarification, because I can't see what you're holding, what are you saying should be included with the offer?
the client representation and commission agreement.
Okay.
Lynn, did you get that in your email?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Client registration, send that over with the offer. They don't need to see your
Okay.
buyer broker. Send it with your offer, because you are, yes, you wanna send it with your offer, because you wanna validate that in fact that this is something that you're doing.
But not necessarily the agreement, just the registration.
Just the registration, you're saying to them, Mr. XYZ company, I am registering this buyer as my client. Number one, number two is I expect to be paid X number percent.
Okay.
Yes, Andrew.
Do you include this form with the attached addendums or anything like that in the RPA to link the forms together?
What I would suggest you write in it says you can add to the RPA in my notes from the class. Buyer and seller are aware that in the additional terms, buyer and seller are aware that real estate commissions will be paid to buyer's representative and seller's representative through escrow at closing. And then we changed it to contingent upon separate negotiations between the parties. And you can just pull out that clause and send it to them. In the listing, you are to the buyer's brokerage agreement, you can add go global and then your name, agree to accept commission as agreed between listing brokerage and go global through separate negotiations. Which means that if you negotiate, so you put in the buyer's brokerage agreement that you expect to earn 3% of the sales price. And $5.95 transaction fee, right?
Is any of this go in agent remarks?
No,
Additional.
no,
Mm-mm.
no, you can't discuss any of this in agent remarks.
All right.
That's what the lawsuit prevents us from doing.
Which is good as a listing agent, cause if somebody only charges 2% and the other person's asking for 3%, and your seller goes up with the person that offers 2%, you're paying them less money anyway, you
Yeah,
get paid more.
But you can't encourage that.
No, of course not, but I'm just saying, you don't wanna put it in I know you can't put it in the remarks, but if you did, then you'd be again required to pay everybody the same amount.
So-
Now the
Well, I
negotiation
just thought,
gives
like,
leeway.
putting in, some language where it says seller is in agreement to, compensate buyer's agent.
Well, you can't say that, because then it immediately triggers that reduction in the compensation.
Now, they said that the commission was gonna be replaced by, like a buyer's contribution. Is that, do we know if that's
Yeah, I don't
true
care what
yet
they call it.
on the MLS?
It's like saying I'm naked or I'm bare.
Yeah, okay.
Both mean the same thing.
Right, okay, that's what I thought. I didn't know if that was like for sure yet, that they were gonna put a place in there for a
They may.
buyer's contribution.
They may, but they may not. They
Okay.
may not be allowed to.
That's why this is
And that's
still,
why this is important.
yeah, okay,
In commercial documents, there is a place for that.
yeah, cause still, even with the commission offered, it doesn't guarantee that they're using that to pay you.
Well, this could be easily client registration and fee agreement. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah,
It's, we want to get paid
right,
by whatever means necessary.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm remembering a specific situation where an addendum was attached to the RPA, but it wasn't referenced in the RPA. And so you just didn't sign it.
That's why it's referenced here.
So it would be, I guess my concern would just be, what if they sign
We
the
can't
RPA?
reference it in the RPA.
Yeah, so you can't reference it in the RPA.
But
My
again, you
concern-
contingent, the whole RPA can be contingent upon negotiations between the parties.
Okay, that would make sense.
That's
That
all
would
with
take-
CYA.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
concern was more, what if they just take the RPA and sign that and not this first page, right?
Okay, if they sign the RPA and not that, then you've got to go back to them and say, I need this signed.
The offer is contingent upon this signature.
Yeah, the
Right.
offer's contingent upon the signature. Now, I have closed many a commercial deal where I never got this back signed. And they still paid me because they were well aware that I expected to be paid. And the courts will know that you expect to be paid and you have to go there. Because you have to let them know they have accepted your offer based on your representations that this is the case. And so they lost any ability to pay you less than the whatever percentage you put in there at that point. You don't want to have to go to lawsuit,
No,
but nobody wants to go to lawsuit, so,
Fair enough.
So anyway, so I don't know if this helps you guys at all, but getting this buyer brokerage will CYA, I think we talked about how you get it signed. We talked about, it's no different than getting the listing agreement signed. I can't put your house on the market unless we go ahead and do this documentation and sign, your press hard by copies is what we used to say. Now, we don't do that anymore. So. I don't know if there's any other questions. It's not gonna be difficult, and this will change. This is what we have today. But we have to start thinking about what we have today, and we have to start putting into practice what we're gonna be expected to do as of July 1st, which means that we have to have our buyer consultations and our seller consultations. We have to tell ourselves what we do for them that's so special. We have to then get the duties owed sign, which confirms that the law expects us to do those things. And then we're gonna ask them to confirm that they are going to reciprocate. That it's gonna be, that since I'm doing this for you, I'd like to ask you to do the same for me. They're gonna sign this. Usually, when I do it, they just go, okay, where do I put my initials? They don't give me much grief. They just start signing. Don't they do that with you, Jess?
yep,
Once I've told them why I'm so wonderful, they just sign. Don't they do that with you? They just
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah, it's
Really,
just-
just sign.
You guys are strong. I mean, people need to learn how
They
to.
need to
you
learn.
have
did. I
to,
trained the
you
three
have
of
to
them.
No, I know.
communicate your strength though.
And I think a lot of times people are so, not necessarily people in this room or on Zoom, but in general, agents want the client. And so a
Right.
lot of times they'll bend over backwards and do things that they wouldn't.
And that client's
ordinarily-
gonna cheat you.
Right,
Yeah,
and so forgive me for saying this, but we all need to grow a pair
yeah,
and protect ourselves
yeah,
Well, you
from.
don't, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You
No.
don't want the client, you want the business.
right,
Because it's two different things. If I could go sell 100 houses for free, but I want the business and that's the purpose.
See, I want the client. So we
Well, I
do.
wanna keep the client after, but I think you have to do the business in order to get the client. So
If you have the client and you know the business, they should
Yeah.
believe you.
Yeah, you want the business. I mean, you can get 100 clients that aren't gonna pay you. But you only want the ones that are gonna pay you. We are not doing this for our health. How many of you are doing this for love and affection?
No
I
one.
didn't see anybody volunteer.
Not even for family, you're gonna pay
Yeah.
me.
I had a trainer once, a national trainer, that said she had some people in her car and they were giving her all kinds of grief about her commission. So she pulled over to the side of the road
Get
and
out.
she said, you'll need to walk from here.
Yeah, my friend left the guy at the bus stop. And he called the
Why
brokerage.
don't you
and
call
then
an Uber?
the agent explained why. And the broker said, well, you do that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have been such a jerk.
Isn't it awful that that happened to you? I feel really bad.
And
Bye.
Andrew, I didn't mean to shut you down like that. When I say, I want the client, not the business, it's about what Deirdre said with longevity and having a client who trusts you to give you their business.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I think the
And their
initial
referral.
stage is much harder, right, with Asian clients. You have to build that trust.
Trust
and
and
respect. Respect, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of work is taken, and some of the things a lot of Americans will not do, but we have to do it. But once you gain your trust, then you can walk home free.
But you don't have to do it by giving them your money.
Not always money. Sometimes busy, we're gonna pick them up at the airport.
Well, we pick them up at the airport too.
Yeah.
I pick people up at the airport, I drop them back off at the airport.
Yeah.
I pick them up at their hotel.
I
even
take them to
feed
lunch.
once in a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
And take them to lunch many times.
But guess what? The buyer broker just signed before I pick them up at the
Yes.
airport.
You can DocuSign or authentisign that buyer brokerage to them, because once Jessica sends the Adobe one, you guys can put it in your forms in transaction desk, and you'll have it right there to just fill in, and you can DocuSign it to them. Just the first thing they have to sign is the duty zone. After that, you can have them sign the client, initial the client representation, sign the buyer brokerage. I'd have them sign the buyer brokerage first and then do the client representation. Initial that, that's the order I would do it in. Then, I would, pick them up at the airport. And until they do that, I say, I'd love to pick you up at the airport. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I have somebody else that I have an agreement with, that I have a contract with, that I'm meeting.
ooh, stick it to them a little bit.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I've actually told people, in fact, I told this to, Walter Raymond, when he was giving you some grief on Halifax, because I turned one of the properties over to Andrew that I had. And he says, well, Andrew's not getting back to me. I said, well, have you signed the contract with him? And he said, well, no. I said, well, if I were you, I'd sign that contract, because otherwise Andrew's not gonna call you back.
Yeah, we have an obligation to people who sign the contract, not to you who doesn't
And
want
did
to.
Walter sign that contract?
Yes, he did.
What was for me?
Had the wrong phone number, which is why I wasn't calling him back. I didn't know he was trying to call me.
Well, it worked out in your favor.
He called me and because he was my client and, as you guys know, I'm trying to retire. And
Just won't let you.
he was one that Andrew inherited. And, when he called me, I said, well, have you signed the contract with Andrew? I know he sent you a contract. And he said, well, no, I haven't gotten around to that. I said, well, I can see why he hasn't called it. That's a good one. And with, one of yours, with Bosick, and I don't know what's going on with, yeah.
He finally sent me $7,900 and we're getting the carpet put in.
I'm so happy. He
And we're
called-
renting it for 6 months because we finally listened.
He called me up, and this is when Jessica inherited from me. He called me up and he said, well, will you lend me some money? I said, I don't think so. I'm not in the lending business. How much are you gonna pay me for that money? I charge, this is hard money. I'm gonna charge 15 or 20%, 10 points. Why not?
To me, the other thing is important because I'm a lender, so priority financial. The most important thing is also some people call me realtor, say, I'm going to show a house. Can you give me a pre-approved letter? Of course, no.
Yeah.
Okay, but a lot of people, because they want to show they are desperate, they are coming from California, I don't care where they're coming from. Give me all the documents. Oh, they don't have the bank statement today. Well, you are not
I'd love
going
to
to
show
get
you.
the approved letter.
As
Yeah.
soon as we get those, we'll be able to arrange
That's
that.
again part of the consultation.
Anyway,
They
what
know they have
happened
to
with
get pre-approved
David
first.
is he calls me up and he says, I can't remember. Oh, he says, well, my painter went over, Jessica had bids for getting the place repaired just to put it on the market. And, he says, well, my painter said it would only cost X number of dollars. I said, well, I emailed him back and I said, well, if your painter's such a rocket scientist, have him sell the house.
Yeah.
He said, well, no, that's not sell her house. I said, well, you can talk to her about this and send her some money.
Yep,
That's good.
And that's what you have, I mean, you have to sometimes
put your
call a
foot
spade,
down.
spade, say, this is how it is.
But sometimes the one that wants me to pick them up, I said, well, I already sent the Uber there, it's only $15. You got $15? You wanna buy a house, you got $15? Then they pay the $15 themselves.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, that's why I tell them at lunch, okay, well, I'll buy this time, you're buying next time.
Yeah.
You know, this is not part of my job description, is not buying you lunch.
Right.
I may pay the first time just to, so I can get all the documents signed, after that, they get to pay.
Mm-hmm,
And most of my clients expect to pay, don't they?
yeah. Yep,
So.
I have a
anyway.
hard time paying. They're like, no, I got it. I'm like, are you sure? Okay,
So,
I'll call.
I know you guys, I'm a hard ass, but I've been doing this for 43 years. And I made a lot of money doing this. And
And I've only been doing this for 5 years, but I learned from a hard ass and I just listened
Well,
and
don't
it worked out.
well, I'm trying to, but it's not working out real good. I just closed the house and Matt screwed up my commission. I didn't get the commission.
Whoa.
What? I had an email, Matt, where's my money? Anyway. So, unless anybody has any questions, Armina can take or Matt can take these two clauses, you can add to the buyer brokerage and you can add to the RPA, the verbiage, she can send that to you. So you can start, you can put it in your phone so that you can put it in. Yes, Robert?
What are all these other agents gonna be doing? We're so, beneficial to have you here doing this. What are the other brokerages are gonna be?
I don't know,
doing?
this is one of my girlfriends is the broker and she said that hers would probably look a whole lot like mine. They're trying to get classes at LVR on this.
So
That's what
there
I
are
was
a
gonna
couple of people who are teaching classes, they're charging $39.
$39, yeah.
And
I saw that.
And I don't want to say you get what you pay for. Deirdre's doing it. She's one of our agents. She's a broker. She's highly respected.
Yep.
So if you want, we can give you.
I audit
$39,
classes
but,
and approve them for
Um,
CE,
So
for the division.
there's a
I
lot
wrote
of
the
information
exam.
out there. And you just have to take some of it with a grain of salt and know that ask questions, assume nothing. So.
I mean, as things change, because Jordan will send me these things like from Fannie Mae, when BA comes out, he'll send me these. And I will get them over to Matt and Armina and Michael, so they can forward them on. And in exchange for him doing that, you guys could throw in a little bit of business once in a while.
It's really good, I promise.
We should have him come in and give a class so they know who he is, so they can develop a relationship.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can ask him, you used to talk to him more than I do.
Yeah, I do. He's on my favorites list on speed dial.
And who's not on your favorite list on speed dial, me?
You are too, and Deirdre, and then family, and that's
And
it.
Gage still calls me.
Does he?
Aw.
Yes.
Does anybody on Zoom have a question? Are we good?
No, I have a question. So impossible, because the buyer doesn't want to pay the, too much of the commission to the buyer agent. So they will go to contact the listing agent directly. They say, hi, I asked the less
Well, if you've
commission.
already sent the listing agent this, the listing agent's gonna go, I can't talk to you, you're represented.
No, they just don't see you. They just call listing agent first, right? They
Well,
say,
sometimes they do that.
for the buyer.
If
I
they've
think
signed
the
the buyer
most
brokerage
agent
agreement,
buyer, they will do it.
if they've signed the buyer brokerage agreement and they do that, they still owe you.
She's trying to say, probably like that.
They
also, before they see you, they just contact.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of double-edged deals.
A lot of buyer agent buyer.
The buyer's agent is either gonna work with them or they're gonna piss them off.
Mm.
If they piss them off, then you go.
So they will represent themselves. Yeah, so
So
it's gonna be difficult. Do agent, they will do agent. Do agent, but
there
they will be messed up.
Which is called multiple representation.
Yeah, right, do agent, they will do agent. Well, listing agent, they want to make more commission, they say, okay, so I just charge you less commission,
Yeah.
regular commission.
you know what I tell people when they
So
call me
what's the worst way
direct
to?
and they ask me if I'll charge less?
Uh-huh.
I explain, I have to handle your whole side of the transaction.
Mhm.
Let me explain what I have to do on the buyer side of the transaction. And for that, I will get also an equivalent amount of money, however much that is. If it's 3%, I'll get 3%. If a buyer calls me and wants to see your listing, I expect to earn the entire commission. And the reason for that is I don't have to show him your listing. I can show him the one down the street. Somebody else will sell yours and I'll get 3%. I can sell the one down the street and I'll get 3%. You add 3 and 3, that's 6. Now, if I bring him directly to you and I only get 4%, did I get the short end of the stick?
No,
Why would I do that?
double the
If I
work
have
for
a
less
job,
money doesn't make sense.
sometimes I make it into their problem. If I go to work and I'm getting paid $50 an hour to do a job, and somebody comes in and they just want me to help them a little bit. How am I gonna do this? If somebody comes in.
$30 because it's only an hour.
Because it's
versus all
only an
day.
hour, they want me to do it for $30. Then the company gets $80 and I earn my percentage of that $80, right? But if you come through the normal channels, go directly through the company, you have not only all the protections of the company, the warranties that the company gives, you'll pay $100, but you get all the warranties and protections. I don't, that's not a good way of explaining it, but I just usually explain that if I have to do both jobs, I usually get paid for both.
Yeah.
If you go to work and you have to be the busboy and the waiter, don't you expect to be paid for both?
Of course.
Well, of course
That's
you
not
do.
the
It
doesn't always work out that way,
Yeah.
but of course you do.
But, you know, I just explained to them, what I usually say is exactly what I said first. If I list your house and I sell it, I will get X%. If a buyer calls me about your house and they want to buy it, I can take them down the street and sell them the same model. And I will get 3%. And you add the 3% I got over here with the 3% I got over here, now I earn 6%. What motivation do I have to do this for you?
Right.
It's very.
I have no motivation to do this for you. And as much as I would love to, I gotta feed my kids here.
Yep.
I'm not doing this for love and affection. This is my job. I'm a highly paid professional. You know, you have to make them understand that if you do that you have no motivation.
Everybody kind of understands, because I've explained it like that too. Double the work does not equal less money. 3 + 3 does not equal 4. You can't do 100% on this side and 100% on this side and only get paid for half of it. Like, that doesn't work and that doesn't add up in the real world.
Yeah.
Then they go, oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I have to do double the job now, your job and their job, and you want me to get paid less? Where does that add up? And they go, oh, well, that makes
You
sense.
say, oh, they say, yeah, I do want you to do that because I'm greedy and I want
Mhm.
to pay
And
less.
then you
Then
go,
I say,
A
see
seller,
ya where the
I know, I
a seller would love to pay 0 commission on
Yeah.
you sell their house.
Right, it doesn't
But
work
it's
like
not gonna
that.
happen.
No.
But also, like you said, I usually say to them is, if I came to your job and said, I want you to work for half the amount and do the same amount of work, would
Mhm.
you want that? That's kind of what you were
yeah,
trying to
that's
say.
what I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. and you
Would
know,
you still
if
do the
I-
same
right.
job?
Cause I can, then if you're gonna do that, Armin, I want you to take a pay cut right now, cause I need to save.
But, you know, if I came to your job and asked you to work for half the money, would you?
Right, and you say, hell no,
Yeah.
but then they're looking at it as, they think commission is a gift.
Yeah.
Right.
They think commission is, oh,
Yeah.
this is just a bonus, your company pays you and this is on top of it,
Yeah.
they really don't understand.
That's why you explain to them the
Correct.
benefit at that listing presentation and at that buyer representation counseling
And
session.
that's why you say, I'm not an employee of Go Global Realty, I'm an
Yeah.
associate with them, I work with them.
Right.
And so they get their little fee to cover your, you know, the licensing part, but I mainly work to get you the buyer for your property, and that's where I make my money.
Right.
Right.
And if I couldn't do that, then I wouldn't be doing this, I'd be stamping, you know, doing stuff at an office and
Work
doing
at
that.
Walmart.
Or being a broker manager and working for me.
Oh, that was rude. I love my job. Okay, so, yeah, but you don't love it enough to work for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
But she does.
Anyway, bottom line is, I like the way Jesse explained it, I
Yeah.
like the way, you know, would you go to your job and work for half the money just because I asked you to?
And I really am that rude. Because I'm white, I can get away with it. I go directly to them and say that, because I want it to hit them and say,
Where
oh,
it
I
makes
never thought of
sense,
it.
yeah.
I never thought of it that way. And that's
Yeah.
what you wanna do, is you wanna hit them back as hard as, because
And
you're
I
trying to justify yourself while you're, oh, I love the one. Well, you're making $15,000. And I said, you know how long it takes to close, divide that out, divide everything out? It works out that I'm working for
40
15
hours a
bucks
week
an hour.
times 90 days.
Don't
Yeah.
forget, we have to pay Uncle Sam like 30% of that.
Yeah, right.
So,
30,
or
I
half,
know what your,
depending
I know
on
what
how
your
your
tax bracket is, yeah.
IRS is.
Go up a
set
little
up.
higher. Yeah.
Shit. Mm-mm.
Even with the kids, you go.
We don't get health insurance, we
Yeah.
don't get
That's-
benefits,
see,
we
that's
don't
what
get
you
none
have
of
to-
that.
Without trying to sound rude
Right.
or overly direct, like
Yeah.
someone I know, you have to make it sound a little sweet, but saying that, by the way, did you know?
Yeah.
I don't have health insurance.
As
It's
an
not provided
independent
by.
contractor, I cover all my expenses myself,
I have to share with my broker.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Blame me, I'm, like I said,
Michael.
yeah,
Some
I
people, they
know.
ask, they say, hey, how much you pay to your broker?
That part you don't
More
have
I
to tell
want
them.
That's none of your business.
Too much. Now, that's a great answer. There's a salesman for you. Robert, say it again.
Too much.
Too much. Way
Doesn't
too
mean you
much.
said how much. To Robert, paying me $1 is too much.
Yep.
Okay, but it's a great using whatever the word is.
Semantics.
Semantics, thank you.
Yeah,
It,
yeah. that's
just by
correct.
saying that, you don't have to say the rest. Just like, what does all Americans like to do? Justify everything. Someone, if you're telling someone, no, I'm not accepting your application, why? You
Right,
don't have to tell them.
yeah.
Okay, why the owner didn't want to take your application. We all feel and have to explain ourselves and justify ourselves,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah,
You
you gotta
don't,
get over that.
yes, that's where a broker comes, we learn, we just like, no, the owner said you didn't, I don't have
Tell
to
them it's my
justify.
broker's fault. My broker made me do it.
Yes,
Oh, yeah. Call Michael.
yeah, no, don't say call Michael, then they get to call Armina,
Call Rita.
and she has to use all that psychology classes she took to get through the conversation.
Oh, no, it's the theater classes that I use more.
Anyway.
But maybe
Okay.
I don't have
You
enough
guys,
ability
this
to
help
do
you
that.
push through this transition?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot, yeah.
Is everybody all right online? I know you feel like the redhead stepchildren, but we still love you out there.
The buyer don't have enough.
There's a
down
question.
payment.
Yeah, so,
Is there a question?
So seller
So-
don't want to pay the commission, that's, the seller's house is really hard to then easy
Hold
to
one
sell
moment
the
online.
7 or 8 offer in line. So in that situation, like, can the buyer put it in the loan or?
No.
That will be appraisal
No, the
issues.
buyer
No,
cannot
no.
put it in the loan.
No.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have
Increase the
that problem
price.
anytime you're in a competitive situation, but the listing agent's done his job. There is not one agent out there that will work for free.
Right.
There, well,
Yeah.
there could be a
When
few
you get a
idiots.
listing, yeah.
Yeah.
There could be a
Well,
few idiots
except
out
for
there.
Armina.
No, he still gets his one.
I would not even encourage that or even let that be a thought, but you can increase the price.
So
Yeah,
when we
that's
take the
illegal.
list, that's illegal. When we take the list,
And
we will ask them to pay both sides. To pay both sides.
Here, it's not both sides. They're,
Like a pay, yeah,
Cause
we'll
you're,
share.
Yeah.
well, share, you're giving up part of your commission. That's what you want to portray to the seller,
Yeah.
is this X amount of dollars, which legally we're not allowed to say, but it actually, a group of cash. But X amount of dollars is what I will do to market your property for, and I'm planning on sharing. Doesn't mean I'm going to.
Yeah.
Because if it happens once in the gray room, you get the unicorn where it comes in the end of both sides.
Uh-huh.
But I'm willing to share and let agents know I'm willing to share to
When
bring
I'm
more buyers.
representing the deal creases, there is not one transaction where the buyer didn't pay his own broker.
That's why we did that.
But those were $10-15 million deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it's FHA, or they don't have any,
Yeah,
FHA, yeah, it's not gonna work.
Okay, there was a question online, Matt.
Yeah.
Deirdre, so what percentage is best to put on the client registration, 6 or 3?
I put 3.
Like side that you're
You
gonna,
decide you're expecting.
Mhm.
You could put 4, you could put 5, you could put anything you want, there is
decide what
no,
you're worth.
yeah.
Decide what you're worth, but usually we think we're worth 3%.
3%.
So, and you can put the verbiage in there where you're adjust to whatever the negotiations are. I gave that verbiage
Yeah.
and that stuff that Armina will send that out to you separate from this whole class thing that I put together. But, or Matt will, one of them will, where you'll accept whatever you negotiate. But if it's too low, then you're gonna have to tell them that it's not acceptable.
And walk away from it if you have to.
And let them tell you, no, I'm not putting in $5,000. I don't have 5,000 to put in, or I'm not putting in 5,000, more than the price to pay you. Now, you know that at auctions, they charge an extra 5%.
Correct.
For the commission.
In the NMLS, they will still put seller contribution. For example, a lot of them, they put 3% or 10,000.
No, there won't be
No,
anything in
after
there
July
taking out,
1st,
that's
it won't
part of
be in
the
there.
agreement.
No, even for seller contribution to the
Nothing.
buyers.
No.
Now, interesting, Deirdre, good question, actually,
Yeah.
is can they put it in,
Can
I
I-
have that says we're willing to pay 3%.
Yeah.
Can I put that in the agent remarks? Cause that's not public.
I don't think so.
As a buyer contribution,
Yeah.
That's different.
it's like
Well,
money
you
towards
put in the
buyer's
buyer
closing costs.
contribution, But if they're willing to pay 3% commission,
Right,
I don't think you can put it in there.
see, I'm thinking that.
Cause you know how
Yeah.
people now
Yeah.
say,
The
seller's
So-
willing to contribute 5,000 towards buyer's closing costs,
So-
if you bring me a full price offer by
Well,
March
that's
30th.
completely illegal.
Yeah.
Jessica,
I
semantics,
see it all the
as she
time.
says, my favorite word, I'm gonna get a t-shirt that says semantics, my favorite word. Seller, willing to pay $15,000 in closing costs.
Right.
Doesn't matter how it's broken out.
If it's allowable now, if it's a conventional loan that only allows 3%,
Doesn't matter, closing costs, they have to conform to the thing. 3% would be for the closing, regular closing costs, the rest could be for commission. They
But-
don't have to spend the $15,000.
but I don't think you can say they're willing to spend 15,000 because now the selling agent or the lender is gonna see that. And they're gonna see that it's greater than the amount that's allowable by the loan type to be contributed and say.
But the actual seller's contribution is done in the contract, not the listing agreement.
That's why it shouldn't be anywhere even in agent comments.
Okay, I'm not saying, she could be right, I could be right,
Call
we
me
don't know.
regarding, how we're both gonna be paid.
Right,
So question on this form.
We're gonna have more phone calls now. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk to one another.
Because when I do a pre-approval, I said, I know the claims are short, well, I know that the sales rate is supposed 6.75, and I need to have 6.25 to qualify for the DTI, and I will put the pre-approval, okay, buyer needs to have, I don't know, to put 400,000, I need to have 1.5 point, I need $6,000 towards rate reduction, I do that in the pre-approval.
yeah, but that's a different laws,
that's
different
not-
rules, that's lending. That's
Yeah,
not.
This is
that's
lending,
amazing.
yes,
And when I give you the pre-approval to the realtor, he need to say, hey, we need to have 6,000.
Right, and that's what the
And
realtor's
a lot
job
of
is.
people in the MLS, some realtors call.
But
me,
we
say,
may not be able to put it in the MLS, is what
No,
they're saying.
that's
And
the-
again, until July 1st
It's
or
not-
whenever the
It
date.
is not in any commercial thing that I know about.
Right.
They don't put the commission in.
No,
Once in a while
No
you'll see it, but
commission,
if they don't put it in there,
contribution.
you just call and say, how much you offering?
yeah. But I'm saying, I know how
Contribution
our
is different.
agents are in the, LVR. Let's see what, is proven and what can be done. Cause
Yeah.
they'll find a loophole, trust me.
Because the problem
Yeah,
is the
this is
commission, not
just
the-
my take on the beginning of this. It will change.
Yeah,
Things will
Yeah.
change.
but it's not the death sentence that
It's
everybody
not.
wrote it out to
In
be.
1991, they decided that we had to do duties owed.
Right,
And everybody said it's the end of real estate.
yeah, I remember that.
Heard about
It was
5-6 years
not.
ago, the iBuyer was the end of real estate.
Yep. The news has to have something, I mean, God.
Deirdre was like, just keep doing what you're doing,
Oh,
you'll be
yeah.
fine, get over it.
All right, anything else?
Nope.
All right, thank you all for.
Yes.
attending.
Wait,